Okay, welcome back to the Syren. Not any particular chapter this time, but what I'm doing now is I'm catching up on previous chapters and building the Carronades and the Canons. I have the parts laid out here for each. I'm going to start with the Carronade, so I don't need these parts right now. Although I do need this piece I made up. So the Carronade is made up of the base, the slide, the couple of pivot points the Carronade goes on, a couple pieces of brackets front and back, the wheels, and the elevation screw. I'll start with the elevation screw. And what I do with the elevation screw is I took two pieces of rope, of line. This line was not included with the kit. And I just twisted them up so it's a nice spiral between two points that I could fix them to. And super glued the whole line, which gives me a nice stiff spiral about the right size I want it to be. And then I went ahead and put a hole in it and put a wire through it to come up with this little piece. Cut off to rough length. And that will end up going through this hole in the back of the carronade to provide the elevation screw. Along the lines of that. But the rest of this still needs to be put together. First thing you do is you got to put the base together and get it painted up. To do that, you have this piece here that is pretty much consistent either side. Sand off the nubs on the end. I'm not too particularly worried about the char on it, because this is all going to get painted anyway, and the paint will cover up the char. One word of advice: this piece, the grain runs the short width across it, so it is very brittle. It might behoove you to go ahead and coat it with super glue, and that'll give it more strength. But in the meantime, just need to take and glue one piece onto the other. A little bit more super glue than that. But let's do this with it. And this front needs to go back enough to fit this little piece onto in front of it. So with that, and then I have these two pieces for the pivot. They're really small, probably can't really see them, and they go towards the front. Instructions say to go ahead and glue these onto the carronade, then glue the whole thing down. But I do it in this way. Glue them on about where they should be. At about the distance apart they should be. Just use the carronade to itself to get them, figure out what distance apart they should be. Let that dry up, and then I'll go ahead and paint it red. Then we got a bunch of holes to put in it for the rings. In the meantime, while that's drying, we have the cannon. This is a little bit more involved. We got the cannon axles. One of them is a little bit longer than the other, so pay attention to that. And they're going to be rounded off so that the wheels can fit on them. Because right now, the wheels will not fit on the axles. And I just go and give a slight round over with a file. It doesn't take much. Because you just want to knock those corners off. Then the wheel should fit in place. And this is just a diamond file I got from Harbor Freight. Inexpensive set, but it gets the job done. The soft wood. One axle. And this wood is very soft. And 2 axles. Now, like I said, these axles are different lengths. The shorter one goes through his back. No, the shorter one goes to the front, the longer one goes to the back. So this will be the front axle. This will be the back axle. So those ones go on about that direction. Set it up here a bit for you. And these things just get glued onto the base of the cannon. That's front axle. Into their respective slots. Get one side done and glue the other side on. And there will be a taper, so it goes from back to front with a taper. You can make sure the cannon fits into the holes in the front, and that should give you the basic frame. Next piece to go into this cannon frame is this piece, which goes on top of the rear axle. Pardon my fat fingers in here, but this is going to have to be cut to length and glued on down. I think that knife blade is getting a tad bit dull. Something like that. A little bit of glue on the bottom. And I think I'll just sit down on top of the axle. Then there's another piece here, and it goes in the front. Get a better cutting surface out here. And let's hopefully a sharper knife. This piece will fit in this front here. You see it needs to cut down quite a bit to fit. A little bit more. Okay. And it'll get glued in the same way. A little bit of glue on the bottom. Coming up the sides. It actually tilts towards the back of the cannon frame. So don't forget to put that angle in there. And on in something like that. There's a wire that goes through here, which I did not get out, so I have to find where I put it. Hold on. Okay. You take a piece of their, I think this is the 22 gauge wire. There's a hole in the side that it goes through. What I do is I just figure out a piece that's longer than I need. And then it can be glued in place. And what I do to glue these in place, I stick them in part way. Put a big blob of glue on the pin where it's just about ready to slide into the hole. And then you can slide it in and it'll be glued in place. Once that's glued in place, we have one last piece here that goes in. Actually, two pieces here to go into the frame. It'll glue to the top of that wire and the top of this brace in the back. Just like that. Don't forget to make sure you put your cannon back in to check its fit. Make sure everything looks good. Then the quill goes in. This is what actually angles the cannon, holds its back for height adjust. It is tapered. You want the fat side towards the back. To raise the cannon, you would have just driven it in further. To lower the cannon, just pull it out to raise the cannon. So with that, cannon base is made, and then there's 4 wheels to go on. Be careful, there are 2 smaller and 2 larger ones. Larger ones go towards the front. So with these, I know these are the larger ones. And these are the smaller ones. And once you get all these things in and everything's dry, do any trimming you need to do. Like these wires that stick out here, you want to just cut off. Do any trimming you need to do. And you'll have your cannon set up once you have them both built. These get painted red with black wheels. I think the outside of the wheels are still the wood color, then the rim, the tread of the wheel, I guess you'd call it, the tire, would be black as been a metal tire on it. So I will get all this painted up, and then we can come back and finish up. There needs to be a series of holes in all these for the eyes. This one will get wheels on the back, nothing on the front, because there's wheels for the back. It'll get these black pieces here, one on the front and one on the back. So I'll get these painted up and come on back. Okay, looking at the Carronade right now. Next thing to do on the Carronade is to put the little jack stays in here and glue these two little pieces here on the front and back. Back one has the hole in it, goes back here. Front one goes up on the very front. And then we can glue these wheels on. I've already got one made up here with all the rings in it. All I do is drill the holes in it and glue the rings in, and then glue the parts in the front. Next thing is just to glue the wheels onto the back. And they just get on some super glue here. Assuming my super glue isn't plugged up. Maybe that'll work better. And the wheels just glue onto the back. And once those are dry, take the Carronade, which I already have my elevation screw in. And I can fine tune that elevation screw so it's not too tall. This is just basically two pieces of line twisted together and super glued together. It's real easy to cut, and then I can just come in here and drop a glue at the hinge point and glue up a little tiny drop at the back, and it just fits on in there. That's going to be too much of an angle. Too much of an angle, I guess they're shooting sharks or something, I don't know. So it just goes in like that, and I can let that one dry. And somewhere around here, oh, there they are, I have the Canons I need to finish up. So I have them, the body of the Canon painted, or the Canon chassis paint, whatever, carriage painted. Wheels are painted black around the edge. Just need to glue the Canon itself in, and then there's a little brass strip that goes across each trunnion on the Canon. But before I do any of that, the Canon gets some rings put into it. And it looks like 2 rings on either side. See the trucks, drill a hole in the back of the Canon for the breech line rings, or I won't. So you're supposed to put a ring on the back of this. I'm going to do where I take the breech line around it and seize it on there rather than an eye bolt. I don't think the Canons would have had an eye bolt in real life. Cap square, the caps are oh yes. To finish everything up, there are 2 eye bolts on each side of the gun carriage. The lower eye bolt also has a split ring on it. The breeching will pass through this split ring when you rig the Canons. Breeching being the excuse me, this cable that comes around the back of the Canon. Excuse me. So I need to drill and attach 2 rings on either side, one of which is a split ring on either side. Glue the cannon on, put the brass piece over the top, paint that black, then the cannons will be built. So I'll get that done and come back. Okay, so I'm back. I got most of my carronades in. I have one more to put in. This one here. And they've all been going in the same way, so I need to show one of them. First thing I do is I take the string that comes with the kit that we're supposed to use, dip the end in some super glue to stiffen it up, and then trim off the end so that I can more easily put it through the ring in the deck, or in the bulwark. May have to open it up. I think I have to on this one. Maybe. That's easy enough to do. I just take my drill bit and stick it in there and make sure it's open. Then the tweezers to kind of pry it a bit. Get myself a fresh edge here. Easier said than done, evidently. Let's see if this thing can go back in. What I do is I try to get through the first one. Something like that. Oh, whoops. Okay, that's not going to work. Don't be afraid to start over if you have to. That one there, one of the threads didn't go through, so it was doing what it was trying to unravel. So I'll try it again. Nice edge. Dip it in super glue. That one looks like it went through just fine. Pull it through. Stick it through the Carronades eye-ring. And through the other side. The reason I go through both sides is so that I'm not trying to fight around the carronade when I'm threading it through. Once it's in, then I can take and clamp the tails together, kind of. And I grab some of my thread here, just regular old sewing thread, and I tie I believe it's a clove hitch around it to simulate the seizing. So I go through one side. On that side of the thread, go back around. And then on the near side closest to me, go back through. If I can get it to stay there. And then a second loop, I just come back to itself and pull it a little bit tight. And then I go through one more time on the far side and do a half hitch. And that gives me a reasonable facsimile of a seizing to hold the lines together. Take off my clamp, and then I start pulling the long end through while pushing the seizing up towards the ring on the bulwark. Just like that. Give another yank to tighten it. Then once that's in place, put a little bit of glue on your knot to hold it in place on the seizing. And then you can come in and trim off your all your tails. I'll have to neaten that one up. Threads out of the way. This is in place. Go ahead and make sure that the tail end has some glue on it so it doesn't fray. Then with a very sharp pair of side cutters, small side cutters, I come in and just cut it off. Cut the tail off. With that, one side of the seizing's done. You can come back in and glue the carronade in place. I'm just using medium super glue for that. Blob on the front, bit on each of the wheels. And then the carronade can go in place. When that's dry, I'll pull this other side through and seize it off as well. And then that will make it look like these ones over here. So I'll let that dry and come back, and we'll go ahead and get one of the cannons in place. I'm doing the cannons a little bit differently. And I don't put the ring in like they say. I'm just going to do the loop around the bob on the end of the cannon. And that should be more, I believe, accurate historically to what it would look like. Okay, for the cannons, the instructions say to drill a hole back here and put a ring in it to put the breech line through. But that's what this big knob on the end is for generally, and I've seen a lot of cannons done with it wrapped around that knob. To do that, I take my string I use for the breech line, breech rope, do a loop in it and clamp it off. Just do it on this, will be a little easier to see. Do a loop, clamp it off, and I do the same kind of seizings I did on the breech line to the bulwark. Do I think it's a clove hitch. Someone out there can correct if I'm wrong. So go through the loop, around to the right of the initial string, and do the loop around to the left of the initial string and through, and then pull it back through this last loop you made. Go ahead and pull it tight. Then I make one more clove hitch on the first side. And that gives me what I feel is a pretty good approximation of a seizing. Just seizing, you're just taking a smaller rope around the bigger one and tying it off essentially to keep it from coming undone. Then I can come in, pull it down a bit, onto the back of the cannon, make sure the seasoning's towards the bottom, and tighten up your breech line. Go back, make sure your seasoning is still tight. What do I do here? Make sure the seasoning is still tight. And then come on with some super glue. Make sure everything just stays in place here. And you can trim off your lines, and that's the cannon. The breech line sees to the cannon. There you go. Cut you off a piece of line here to work with for the other side. Oops. Dip it in some super glue to hold it together. And then if you follow the instructions, you'll know that there is your lower ring here has a split ring on it. You need to feed your breech line through that split ring. Just something like that on both sides. Sometimes you just need to use gravity to your advantage. Through, and there you go. One cannon with its breech line. You turn off this end because it's kind of fat. Then when I bring the ship back over, I can go ahead and just glue the cannon in place and then do my breech line seizing. And I'll do the seizing on the breech line of these, same way I did on the Carronades, where I just feed it through and clamp it and seize it in place, and then trim off the tailings. So put this cannon in place. Something like that, centered in the opening. Wheels against your transom. Because just for normal day-to-day storage, they would have been shoved up as far as they could against the transom. And then they would have had the blocks holding them in place. So once you get that in place and tried, you can just feed the breech lines through the rings on either side. These tweezers I have leave a little bit to be desired on their ability to grip anymore. Whoops. So I'll get these two C's into place and come back, and the next thing I'll do is I'll do one of the blocks that hold these in place. I'm not going to do them all on camera. I'm going to do one and show you how I make it. But since there are 68 I think sets of blocks to make, those must be done off camera. Do one on camera, the rest of them off camera, and come back and show you what they look like. Okay, for the carronade and cannon rigging, we're making these blocks. 2 blocks for each set of rigging, for each set of tackle, and 2 sets of tack on either side. First thing you do is make this S hook with a hook on the end of the block. What they're showing is they're bringing a hook and drilling into the block and gluing the hook into the block. You do that, you'll be blocking the hole that your thread goes through. So I'm making this an S hook that I tie into place. To do that, I have a chunk of wood. But how you can see, I have 3 little tiny nails in here. So I can come back and take my wire, stick it in between 2 of the nails, bend it around, over the top and back around, get a little bit tight, pop it off, and there, over you can see that we have a little S-hook. Cut off the tail. If I can see it again. Close up, which one side is completely closed, because that's going to tie onto the block. And that's one S-hook. You need 8 per Carronade, 4 per Canon, so I've just got started on this. I'm going to sit down, I'm going to make a whole bunch of these little hooks. And then I'll come back and rig up one set of blocks, put on the Carronade, show you how that's done, and move on from there. Okay guys, this is going to be hard to see, but I'm starting to rig up these little S-hooks onto the blocks. I'm going to do it one time on camera. It's going to be hard to see. What I'm basically doing is I'm taking a block or piece of thread, grabbing one of the S-hooks I made previously and sticking on it. And then I can do a double overhand. So I can pull it tight. And I'm actually doing it so that my overhand is going to end up on the side of the block rather than on the face. For half the blocks, that's it. Tie it on, you're done. For the other half, you need to have a piece of line through it for your rigging line, because it gets seized to the block. So I stick that through. And then I take my block, stick in the center. I'm sorry this is so small, but these blocks are tiny. 3 30-second or 5 30-second blocks. Goes in, there's a hole on 2 faces and a groove on the other 2 faces. So you can get it in, pull your string, your rigging tight that goes around it. And keeping it tight, touch a little bit of super glue on it to hold it in place. Make sure you get the super glue on the block as well as the, in this case, black rigging. And I do that on both sides. And you can cut off this black. Again, I apologize for my fingers being in the way. It's hard to see in person as well. Then once that's done, you can take your running line that you have through there and you can seize it on. And I do that the same way I did before. Basically create a clove hitch. And if you're really good, you can create the clove hitch in mid-air and run the line through it. For me, if I can do it, it's dumb luck. Pull it tight. And then I do a second half hitch. And that makes a reasonable facsimile of seizing of the line. Again, a little touch of glue on it to hold it in place. Don't want it coming undone. Nip it off as close as you can without actually cutting lines. This line here, that's the tail off the running line. Put a super glue on it to keep it from fraying. Snip it off because you don't need it anymore. And that gives you a block put onto the running line and a hook. This hook I need to do a trim to open back up. And these two together will give me one piece of rigging for a carronade. A little bit of beeswax on the line. Which will kind of stiffen it up and hold it together. It's not as critical on this line because there's a lot of poly in it, polyester in it. But if you're doing like an Artisanal Latina model that has their pure cotton line, you really want to put beeswax on. It helps keep from looking fuzzy. A little super glue on the end allows it to run through the block easier in general. Just got a little fat. If you have a small enough drill, it helps run a drill through the hole to get the line run through. So you did one through one side, through the other again. Like that, and that gives you one set of blocks for one side of a carronade or cannon. And to get that in place, and you have little hooks, you just hook those over the eyes. Easier said than done. That's where you can see that. These things will just literally look over the eyes. Like I said, easier said than done. Hook over an eye there. Hook over an eye in the other part. And you can pull them tight. Little manipulation to try to get them to go straight. Now the instructions say that you should do a coil loop right here on the deck. I would bet you everything I have that if you went back in time and looked at this ship when it was in service, you would never see these lines coiled on the deck. The cannon would not be considered secure because it could shift back and just pull that line through. But on the other side, and I found on the web of one of the Carronades on the Constitution, line on the side of the carronade. So that's what I've been doing here. Did on this side here. I'm not going to show that, but it's just basically it's tied. Line comes back, ties around here. Then it comes back up and ties around here, and the tail end is hanging down here. Or in the picture I have shown earlier, it comes back and is actually seized to this line, but I think that's just for display purposes on the ship itself. But I firmly believe it'd be tied off on either end. So I'm going to do that for all these carronades on the sides. I'm also going to do them for the upper lines on the sides and for the cannon. The difference is, if you noticed the picture earlier, the upper lines shows that this tail end rope just wraps around several times on the blocks, on the lines for the block. I think it actually comes back, ties here, then ties up here, then comes and wraps around. I'm not positive, but I'll figure something out to make it look something what I think would be somewhat historically accurate. But that's how they're done. I'm not going to show all these. I will come back on the next video and show you what it looks like when it's done. The next video is going to be doing the ship's boat here, so I'll get these 4 carronades done, and probably these four and after them as well around the ship's boat, so they're out of, so the ship's boat's not my rigging them, and you can see what they look like then. But when I come back on the next video, it'll be the ship's boat here being built. With that, I will let you go. Thank you for watching, and I will see you next time.